live.
Thank you for joining us for episode 22 of Let Your Words Count. I'm Gary Gant here with Ethan Merriweather, and we are here for Let Your Words Count, where we explore the meanings behind the words that shape our lives. Today's word is temperance. Temperance. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And for the definition of temperance, we have temperance refers to moderation or self-restraint, especially in regard to one's behavior, desires, or consumption of substances. It involves balancing indulgence with control. Temperance again refers to moderation or self-restraint, especially in regard to one's behavior, desires, or consumption of substances. It involves balancing indulgence with control. Ethan, do you have the etymology and history for us?
Yep. The history is the word temperance originates from the Latin word temperantia or temperantia.
Go ahead, bro.
A little voice help right there.
Right.
Which means moderation or balance. In ancient Greece, temperance was one of the 4 cardinal virtues. And it was heavily emphasized by philosophers like Aristotle. The idea was that living a balanced life, avoiding excess, was key to achieving happiness and well-being.
Interesting. Now I just had to look it up because I'm curious. So the cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Okay.
Justice, fortitude. That's pretty good. So what's on your mind about temperance?
I think this is one that's generally viewed as positive, right? Having an amount of self-control. And I think as we were kind of going through our template for the word, it brought up substances a lot. So it seems like the definition of it being tied, temperance being tied to moderation, but it seems like there's an especially strong emphasis on consumption of substances, like I said in the definition, alcohol specifically. But obviously that extends to other things now. So I think this is one of those kind of warnings against overindulgence in something that impairs judgment or takes you away from reality. Provides you this temporary escape where you're not really getting away from anything. So that's kind of where my mind is going is, and again, I know that it's been extended to apply to a lot of other things regarding self-control. Anything you can apply moderation or self-control to: anger, excess of whatever kind of behaviors, consumption of substances, whatever. There's kind of wide reaching, but I think generally it's a good thing. And it can be, again, applied in not so spiritual or moral kind of a use case either. It could be, balance for, temperance for not overworking yourself. Temperance and how much you hang out and how you eat, what kind of diet you have. There's a lot of other things that I think this could apply to as well.
Very interesting. I was, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how even the philosophers brought this up concerning the 4 cardinal virtues. It's like, but when you look in scripture, it actually talks about it's one of the fruits of the spirit, right?
Right.
And I know philosophy, there's a meeting. I really believe that there's a meeting grounds between philosophy and the religions that we find ourselves in some type of way, right?
Absolutely.
There are key takeaways from that. And when you look at temperance, why do we have temperance in place anyway, right? Right, like you said, like if it's focused on indulging in substances and different things like that, it's a protection method, right?
Yes.
It's I won't even call it an option, right? But I call it's a standard that we should all live by not. I remember you talked to me about this a few months ago about balance, right? And I think that's what temperance is about, that self-control. It's really finding that balance between not not overstepping and not getting yourself to a point where you are violating the things of God in some type of way, right? Like for me, you know, I'm gonna bring this up. You know, the way we were raised in church, you know, they basically said there's no alcohol, no drinking, no. I mean, dude, it was a lot of stuff that we just could not do, and I think a lot of people that's on the on the YouTube channel watching this show can really attest to that. You know what I'm saying? You know, if that's the right word. But I think what we've done is we created issues by not allowing people to have certain experiences or whatnot. For instance, like if like a glass of wine, there's nothing wrong with a glass of wine, but I think it would be looked at as we don't do that in this building or in this church or in this belief or whatnot. And when you do that, you're basically in some form, and I'm just using that as a small example. You throwing the baby out with the bathwater,
Right.
Without, because if you notice, the word in the definition was excess,
Right.
excess, and even Paul in the scripture talks about not to be drunken with wine as overindulgence or over excess of it. You know what I'm saying? So there is a limit that, or a balance, going back to that word balance, that a person can have without overstepping a mindset. And the question is, being careful with my words here, is there's a temptation that we, I think the way church as we know it has done, they're trying to protect people from sins and different things like that, of drunkenness and the over access of things. But the question would be, are they doing it the proper way by throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Because everyone is different in some type of way, right? You know, but
Right.
there's an experience of temperance that I don't think that we're taught properly, because self-control and temperance are the same thing, right? But are we actually teaching people to have self-control? You know, and I'm still thinking it out. I know what I want to say, but I don't want to offend anybody at this time.
I understand.
Yeah.
Because and I mean, and you brought up a perfect example, right, of Paul talking about not taking wine in excess, but then we also have the balance, the counterpoint. We told Timothy, right, to drink wine for his often infirmities,
Yeah.
right? So he recognized a health benefit to consuming a little bit of wine and a risk to overindulgence for having excess, right? So there's the health aspect. We've seen, right, people that have consumed an excessive amount of alcohol over their lifespan, and you can tell in some people you have different organs that start to fail, and it's the same for smoking cigarettes or anything, you know. And this is not to condemn people, you know.
Right.
You if it's your body and you want to destroy it by something or help it by something, that's all on you. You know, it's not a judgment if that's how you enjoy yourself, right? But it's a matter of, there's some things that when done in excess, it takes a toll on the body.
Yes.
And for some of those things you can see, other things you might not. There might be other things that people can overindulge in that don't show, you know, but you know, there are some things that overindulgence compromises your health, right? So there's a use of temperance for trying to attain long-term health, a balance, as we said earlier, right? And there's something to be said for, you know, encouraging people to enjoy life's pleasures within reason and within whatever your moral standard or moral compass says is good. Enjoy them in moderation. but not to overindulge and deprive yourself completely, right? And again, depending on the topic, because just there's some topics where people are going to just stay away from. And again, the example that you brought up, and I understand the dilemma church leaders were facing, because and we know the way we grew up, you have tent meetings outside during the summertime. You're pulling in people off the street. You're pulling in people that are walking by the church parking lot, drunk, high, prostituting, whatever. You're pulling them in to this church service live in real time. And when you're trying to minister and monitor and help a large group of people, and scattered throughout that group, you have one or two people who are former alcoholics. It's difficult to manage that group and say, drink wine in moderation or consume alcohol as you're able to control, restrict, and limit yourself, because those people who may have had a history of alcoholism, by definition, can't control it.
Yeah.
And indulging just a little bit might throw them over the edge and lead to something worse. So I recognize, as much as I can be critical about some things, I recognize the dilemma in trying to manage a large group of people with a large group of tendencies, and maybe overshooting a little bit, right? Because you're trying to look out for that people not falling off the deep end with overindulgence or excess in certain things, right?
Yeah. That's it's kind of hard, man, because especially church is about winning souls and different things like that, and then you hear other people saying that, well, it's okay to do that, and that's not what we're saying. And I agree with what you're saying about everything is in moderation, but I'm not sure if that message is clear all the time.
Sure.
Right? You know what I mean? Because to me, I think self-control should come to ministry as well. When you're ministering to someone, you see what I'm saying? Like I think sometimes, at times, and someone correct me if I'm wrong or whatnot, but I think sometimes we can. The Bible says that he that winneth souls is wise, right? So I think that when you are trying so hard to win souls and you do whatever it takes, has it crossed your mind that you might be doing too much and you're not in control of yourself, trying to get somebody to know God or whatnot? So that's what I'm saying. Like, when it comes to temperance, there can be the balance that we're talking about has to be evident. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to explain it properly. I think when it comes to souls, I think we have to take a step back and really understand the processes that, for one thing, people are fragile.
Right.
Right.
Right. And
when you're talking about something as temperance or self-control, a lot of people, most people don't see. I don't want to generalize, bro. Like seriously, I don't want to generalize, because this is the thing. Like, there's a sense of maturity and growth that we're always talking about that takes place.
Absolutely.
And when you talk about temperance, there's maturity in that.
Yes.
When you talk about temperance, there's growth. That means that someone has arrived to a point where temptation is no longer an issue. So when I look at the book of James talking about, when you ask of God, you ask God for wisdom. You know what I'm saying? You have not because you ask not. Why? Because you ask amiss, right? Why? Because you're trying to consume it on your own lust. You see what I'm saying? So when you have an issue with lust, that lets me know temperance is not available or does not exist. And I think that the reason why I like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm wrong by saying that, man. So the thing is, this is the reason why I think one of the books we should start off with is James.
Right. Because
I think James is a book that start off based off of his own experiences. Yes. When most of these brothers are writing these letters, they're not writing it because this is not textbook.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
They're writing this because they have full on self experiences for these things.
For sure.
There's a reason why they had to write this stuff.
For sure.
And their writing this is to warn people that are reading these things of this experience, and for them to be aware.
Absolutely.
Be aware.
Absolutely.
So when I think about temperance, you're talking about maturity.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the fruits of the Spirit alone, you know, you're talking about a mindset, a driven spirit that helps us to avoid. Now, see, that's the thing, man. We constantly say to avoid harm, and that's not. When you talk about operating by the Spirit of God, you're talking about a mature level. For one thing, you're talking about the Spirit of God is within a man. That is something that's absolutely powerful. That's what I want to say. It's powerful. If you ignore it, and that's the thing that I want to bring up as well, is when temptation comes, is temperance turned on or is it ignored? You see what I'm saying? So I think that because temperance, I can't. It's so much in my brain right now, man.
You good. I think when it comes to something that is a temptation for somebody, that's when temperance is more important, but it's also more difficult to achieve. Like, as an example, I never really liked alcohol. I've tried it before. I've had some drinks before, but I never really liked it.
Yeah.
Right. So telling me to display temperance in consumption of alcohol, fine, no problem. I don't have to have any of it and I'm good.
Yeah.
Some of my other vices, smoking sometimes when I was younger, to go down that path of, okay, having one in moderation every now and then is okay, would probably lead to me overindulging.
Yeah.
And me having less temperance because maybe that was a vice for me. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
it's easy to say display temperance to this thing that you never had a proclivity to.
Yes.
But if it's something that was a weakness for you at some point in time, displaying temperance is difficult because it's again, you can find yourself back down the slippery slope of where maybe something had control over your life and had you in, you know, and there's addictive behaviors, there's addictive substances, right? Even in some foods. And for a person that does not have a track record of really displaying and maintaining self-control over certain things, you got to, again, the wisdom and the maturity you talked about, you have to make a judgment call for yourself. Do I have this under control enough where it's safe for me to try to indulge in moderation, or is this going to be a slippery slope for me that's going to slip me back into someplace I don't want to be?
Yeah.
That's up to the person.
Yeah,
right?
that's so true. Thanks for that, man, clearing that up a little bit because I did want to be sure I didn't want to confuse anybody on the dial.
Right.
On the dial, right. But, you know, I didn't want to confuse anybody because when you talk about temperance, I do believe that most people do have vices in some type of way.
Sure.
Right?
We're human.
And we're all challenged in some form, whether it's drinking, smoking, weed, whatever, man. Any
food, sugar, salt,
anything, man.
Butter.
And I like what you gotta love the butter. It goes back to, man, you messed me up, man, with the butter. Now, that was a good point that you said earlier about I can't think of it. It was way earlier on. It was about
people's vices.
No, it was even before that.
Oh.
But I don't want to prolong the thought. But when you think about self-control, I think about I think about when something, and we're talking about something easy like drink. Well, I can't say it's easy because some stuff is hard for people. Mm-hmm. What if you're faced and you're confronted with something? All right.
Like what? Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's talk about the civil rights movement.
Sure.
When you go in there and how the people who sitting at dining room tables kept their composure while names are being. You're talking about the amount of self-control in that moment that you gotta have. You see what I'm saying? Or you're in the military and you're in boot camp and you have this sergeant yelling at you in your face. How much self-control you gotta have in that moment, especially when you are the moment of crying. Because the thing is, once you show your face to that sergeant, he's gonna have you. You know what I'm saying? Like if you break down crying, that's what I'm saying. Once you show a sign of weakness,
Right.
So the key is just think about arguments. I'm going down the line. We constantly talk about drinking and different personal substance abuses and different things like no, but let's take it down a area of bullying. You have bullying and different things like that where someone have to have self-control in that moment. You have a child that's impacted. Listen, man, when we grew up, man, we didn't have all the you got roasted in front of everybody. You got beat up. You fought. You bought. You beat
Not
up somebody. I mean, across the board.
Not the same as today, for sure.
It's not the same, man. I mean, like now dude, they bully text. I'm like, what, man? Get out of here, man. I just turn it off, right?
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So it's a different mentality, right?
Right.
So, and by all means, that is a sensitive subject, when people are affected in some type of way or impacted in some type of way. So I don't want to look down on a person that's impacted and feeling like they're weak or anything like that, because that's their experience. And if they're feeling impacted in some type of way, we don't want to talk about them in that manner, because we do care that people are being violated or harmed in some type of way, right? But let's get back to temperance. I think that in that moment, if that child is facing or suffering bullying or whatnot, what will be the tools? Because adults get bullied too.
Sure.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of times, we're not sharing or speaking on the situations where we are confronted with an obstacle where self-control is the action that have to be taken. Because I know a lot of people would actually respond adding to the fire instead of using self-control and taking a step back and say, hey, I'll just listen. You see what I'm saying? So there is a benefit in my mind to temperance. Not just a benefit, and I'm saying that lightly, is a huge benefit to having temperance, right? And self-control. There's nothing like self-control. When someone is in your face, when someone is wanting and you're being taunted and they are expecting you to do something, respond in some type of way, but you hold your composure, you hold your peace, right? Even if some harm is happening to you, people, and you're not, and people are looking at you as being weak and being soft and different things like that. But no, you're not. You're actually holding your peace. You know what I mean? And you're allowing the situation to take shape, take form or whatever. You're going to be looked at as it looks negative
For sure.
on you.
Right. For sure.
So what do you do about that? How do we teach that temperance actually has a benefit and a long lasting reward? You know what I'm saying? At the end of it, I actually believe that. You know what I'm saying? Scripturally, if you look at scripture, you see a lot of times, man, when people held their peace, there's other outcomes that happen that came to their aid in some type of way.
Absolutely.
It happens. But I don't know. I was just thinking higher in the moment, and even me, like and not allowing frustrations and harm be the vehicle to me responding in a negative way. That's going to really not really resolve anything. You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
I do. And it's funny too, because as you were bringing that up, right? I was thinking, I was thinking back too, because again, right, in the definition and in the etymology of the word, again, it's frequently mentioning substance abuse as like the crux of the definition, like the main point of it. But as you just described, right, it goes beyond that. It applies to a lot of other things outside of just what you put inside your body. And you mentioned bullying. I kind of giggled for a second because I thought back to, again, as we talk about people's tendencies, right, and having self-control. I could remember a lot of people that I've heard in my growing up in the places we grew up that would talk about how few struggles they had and how they didn't have difficulty with the same things other people had difficulty with. And they would a lot of times hold that up as this badge of honor, right? And almost like a comparison of, well, I'm maybe a little bit more holy or more righteous than you because I don't have this issue that you had, but you're mean to people a lot.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? So you might not have this substance abuse tendency that you have to struggle with, but you put people down a lot to the point that it seems almost habitual that the only way for you to feel good is by making somebody else feel bad. That's a similar issue. It's a different thing, right? But I don't, I never did this, never did that. Okay, but look at how you treat people sometimes, right? You treating people in a bad way, in a way that makes that person feel bad, might be your tendency, your issue, that you need some moderation and you need to kind of reel in your own treatment of other people and your behaviors and interacting with people. If it's not, so again, the lesson in that is just be observant and really, really be honest about how you do your own self-reflection, because, maybe you don't have some other weaknesses other people have, but we're all human. We all have weaknesses. Yes. Maybe your weakness is something you don't perceive as such, but other people might recognize it to be a weakness in you. So just, we have to kind of be careful in how we judge other people in that.
Totally agree with that, man. That was a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, because that do you see how you look right now? Right. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like that even with that self-control, like to me is, and I'm gonna leave this as my last final thought. Like, do you know what you look like at the end? Do you know where you're landing? Right. And that's kind of when you think about, awesome. I really want Temperance to be that vehicle, or not even an option. I don't want the Temperance as an option. I want it to be my focal point. I want it to be the thing that drives my my foundation, so to speak. You see what I'm saying? Self-control. And then awareness and so on. And like you said, the fruits of the Spirit, is very, very important. And I'm going to read it right quick, So I'm reading Galatians 5:22. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, right? Long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. So that's very, very important for us to understand that when you have this, to me, it says there is no law, and I agree with that. I believe that this is the straight fruit from God. You see what I'm saying? And I think that it's important that we practice and prioritize these types of things in our life, in our behaviors. So the outcome, and every time the outcome may not be what you expect it to be, because a lot of times when you have self-control, you're going to make that person even more angry. I know a lot of times when you keep your composure, and I know a lot of times where you have self-control and operating with that temperance, you're going to make the opposing view very angry, you see, because you're keeping your cool, and they expect your response to be at the same level as theirs. But temperance, like I said, is maturity, is growth, is at another level. Especially if you're operating by one of the fruits of the Spirit. Even Aristotle in the philosophy was talking about it's one of the 4 cardinal virtues that we operate under. I'm like, that's a win-win for me. So, my final thought is, when we operate, when we are opposed, if we have an opposing view, if you're confronted with a challenge, just keep your composure, be steadfast, try your best to be at a point where light can be displayed in the moment. And I believe that is a character that is pleasing to our Creator. End of story. When you're able to do that, our perfect example is the Lord Jesus. I really believe this man operated with that self-control, and listen, they hauled the man off in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if you look at that story, but I'm reeling myself in, just a thought, just a final thought. I think temperance is something that we need to look into more. Have self-control. You know what I mean? Like really operate by the Spirit of God, and you want your output to be a light and not walking in darkness. I'm done.
That's good. That's good. And my closing thoughts is just, kind of reiterating some of the things you mentioned. I think that the takeaway with this word is again, balance and moderation. Balance and moderation. And what you just mentioned, knowing who you are, like the question that we always say and challenge each other with is, you guys gonna hear it a lot on this channel, is know what you're becoming.
Yes.
For the things you choose, for the things you say, you do, whatever, know what you're becoming, and be deliberate, be intentional, be conscious about what you're becoming and the things that you choose, which points back to it does you better to have some sense of identity in who you want to be and what you want to be. Because I can think back, and usually we didn't really get to this today. We talk about like a positive and negative aspect of the word. And I can remember many experiences that felt negative as I was coming up. And coming into understanding who I was, you be in a situation where everybody is doing some certain thing and you don't want to. And people might try to ridicule you or make you feel bad for not doing that same thing everybody else does. And your temperance may feel like it created a negative experience for you. But as you get older, you start to wear those as, again, kind of badges of honor. And you start to kind of become proud of yourself for standing up for who you are, for what you're about, in the face of somebody who doesn't want to do that and wants to try to make that a negative experience for you. And again, in the interest of balance and moderation, also be careful not to go so far. And again, this is every person, and depending on who you are, how you think spiritually and everything else, to find the balance of the proper amount of self-restriction that doesn't lead to feelings of resentment or feelings of like an unhealthy relationship with pleasure, right? Because there are certain things that by themselves, or maybe it's not taught against in a religious writing or whatever, that is something pleasurable. But again, some people kind of get into this mentality where they have to deny themselves of all pleasures in order to be pleasing, right? Or in order to kind of reach their life goals. But again, it's going to be up to every person, but be careful not to develop an unhealthy relationship with just simple pleasures. But that comes back to, again, finding moderation, finding your moral compass, your moral center, and everything else, and all those things. So that's it for me.
Man, very good, man. Very good. This is Temperance, the word for episode 22. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Ethan Merriweather.
Gary Gant.
And we are signing out. God bless you. Let your words count.